Welcome to the E-commerce Expert Podcast, where we get up close and personal with the superheroes of e-commerce, getting them to reveal their most profitable tactics and strategies to help you level up your e-commerce game. So fasten your seatbelt and get ready for an info-packed ride with your host, e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing OG, Derek Gehl.
Welcome to the E-commerce Expert Podcast. This is your host, Derek Gehl, and today's episode is going to be entertaining, just because I've known this guy for I don't know how long, for a long time. I've known him, but I haven't known him as well as I have until really the last 6 months, and I've really got to know him, and it's been an experience. And today, honestly, I'm blessed. This is one of our inaugural podcast episodes. And for this, I have one of the best copywriters in the world for you. And not just any copywriter, but a copywriter that has just an incredible career. He has beaten so many of the best controls. But what's unique about this guy as well is he doesn't just write copy for other people. He built his own brand in the dating niche. You might have heard of a gentleman named Michael Fiore, to the point that was his pen name. And he even ended up on Rachel Ray under his pen name in this niche. And it all stems back from his ability to write absolutely magnetizing, incredible copy. And he's a little crazy. I can probably tell you the show's going to be rated PG-13. I'll just throw that right out front. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Chris Haddad to the show. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. What an introduction. I love it. That was amazing. By the way, we were just chatting casually before this and the podcast started and you were like, and now I'm in my radio announcer voice, welcoming you to the show. I think I do the same thing on my podcast.
Oh, totally. You got to throw in your sexy voice.
You have to.
Yeah,
what's the point of having a show otherwise?
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah.
What are you gonna talk about?
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. So let's start. You've got such a crazy kind of story, right? And let's start there. You're like this copywriting legend.
I'm not dead yet, but I am a legend according to people out there. Yes. I always think it's weird when people call you a legend when you're only 45, but I'll take it.
And still alive. Okay. That's true.
And still alive. Yes.
Okay. How did you get here? Give us your origin story. As crazy as it is.
I mean, there's versions of this story. I actually have a whole video that's like an hour and a half long where I gave a speech called "If I Wasn't Rich, I'd Be Dead" at Copy Accelerator a few years ago. And it's like my story end to end, like how we kind of got where we are. It made people cry a little bit. It's quite a tale. But the short version is I grew up in Massachusetts. My dad was a sales guy. My mom was a teacher, very middle class, kind of whatever. Had no idea what I was going to do with my life or whatever I could do with my creativity or whatever else. I didn't think being a writer was a thing people were actually allowed to do in life. I went to college, did a bunch of film and TV stuff in college, went to LA. Hilary Swank at one point almost hit me with a cast iron frying pan in Los Angeles. I'll tell you that story sometime if you really want to know. Moved up to Seattle, worked for a digital rights management firm, got fired from that job. Got a job writing greeting cards for a living for a year, got fired from that job. Every single job I ever had, all through my 20s, right? My 20s were basically me temping and crying and getting fired. That's all I did. And then at one point I got fired from the greeting card job and I went to a career counselor and I couldn't even afford the $90 she wanted to charge me. So she gave me a deal. She only charged me $50, which was a big deal for me at that point. And she asked me what I wanted to be, what my biggest ambition was. And I said, if I can just make 45 grand a year as a writer, I'll be happy. And she was like, have you heard of this copywriting thing? And I said, wow, kind of, but what's that? And that led me on this weird journey where I started writing copy for like banks and shit. Cause I had this prejudice against direct response, right?
Yeah.
I was like, long form copy. Are you nuts? That's the scammiest thing in the world, whatever. And I wasted 3 years of my life doing a bunch of like bullshit, branding copy that didn't pay very well because of that.
Yeah.
And then I fell into the direct response world through this guy, Harlan Kilstein, and suddenly took off. I went from making, I think, 60 grand one year to making 200 grand the next year. Became kind of a hot shot in the copywriting world for a while, did a bunch of stuff, was dealing with a bunch of my own health issues all through that. Right when I started my copywriting career, I bounced my car off a semi truck and slammed into a concrete wall at 60 miles an hour. So I'm still dealing with that 20 years later. Got hit by Lyme disease. What else? Oh yeah. Did the copywriting thing for a while. And then I decided to do my own offers, went off to this Rachel Ray thing with Michael Fiore, where I went on television as Michael Fiore, my alter ego, built an 8-figure company in the relationship advice niche, got hit by Lyme disease, got hit by bipolar, almost died a bunch. And now I'm here.
God,
I think that's it.
That was it.
And
how many decades was that we just summarized?
That was like 40.
40, yeah.
No, 40 years, 4 decades.
Yeah, 4 decades. Yeah.
There's a lot that's happened. Like I could talk about the time I got arrested at Burning Man too. I could talk about like,
oh God, yeah. I feel like we need a whole other episode of the adventures of Chris Haddad.
Oh my God, they're nuts. Yeah.
So a career counselor, hey, that's crazy. That I guess they do play a role.
Yeah, it helped me because I was so aimless and I didn't believe in myself. Traditionally, this is the thing too, Derek, because I have bipolar too, and I didn't know that for many, many years.
Sure.
And I was miserable. I had no self-esteem. I didn't believe in myself. I quite honestly thought I was a piece of shit. I remember once going to my therapist years ago after Angie and I got together, and I was like, man, she's so awesome. If somebody that amazing loves me, then maybe I'm not like the biggest piece of shit in the world after all. Yeah. And my therapist was like, well, why would you have to be a piece of shit in the first place? But my brain just would not let me see that. Right.
Yeah.
And so success for me, I gripped onto that like one of those kittens on a rope on one of those posters, right? Because I had no self-esteem, didn't believe in myself. I was in profound amounts of pain, physical and emotional all the time. But hey, all of a sudden I was able to go out and make money for people. And that was a thing that really, that's what sustained me through all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's such a crazy story. And here we are today. And we were talking about like, we're literally just before the show started, we're like, wow, where is Chris going to go now?
I know
that he's not being held back by bipolar, Lyme disease, debilitating injuries.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. My wife and I'm pretty nihilistic at this point in my life. I wonder here's the thing that I wonder, and I'm sure people who are listening had a similar thing. I regularly wonder who I would be if I hadn't had that car accident all those years ago. Right? Sure. Because the last 20 years, it's every single moment of my life. And I do wonder, when you've literally spent nights, I mean, long periods of time not sleeping at all, and literally laying in bed crying, like desperate, like asking the universe for help that is not coming, that certainly changes your perspective on things. Sure. And so I wonder about like how that's impacted my copywriting and my ability to see people and who I would be without that. And I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, purely speculation, but I bet you, glad it's over, obviously, but I bet you that has contributed in different ways to making you who you are, and your ability to understand people, to read emotion, to communicate with people. Because let's face it, you have a knack, right? You have a skill there. Of course, you've studied it and stuff like that, but there's lots of people that study it and can't do what you do.
I agree with you. And I think part of it is, when I was teaching copywriting, because I had a course and I recently shut it down, but a lot of it is I just tell people, you're not special and that's awesome. Right? You're not special. And that's awesome. Because so many people, we go around and we all think we're the only ones who are suffering from this crushingly low self-esteem, or who have massive social anxiety.
Oh my God.
Who have this, who have that. Or, like I go to business events and I'm just like, so who in this room has social anxiety? Everybody raise your hand. And they're all like, yeah. Like, I'm like, none of you are trying to be assholes to each other. You're all just scared shitless. Just so you know.
Yeah.
Right? And it breaks through that. But I just discovered, with my bipolar, I have a higher intensity of emotions sometimes than other people have to deal with. Yeah. But it's the same emotions, right? It's the same things that everybody is dealing with. It's just a more intense and more painful version of it. With my car wreck injuries, I know full well what it's like to be in absolute agony, where it feels like a shark is chewing on your spine, and that sucks. But I know pain pretty well, and I know that I'm not the only one who's feeling that pain, whether it's to that extreme degree or not. And the same thing with the Lyme disease thing. I mean, I was exhausted for years and I could barely get out of bed and my skin was gray and all this other kind of shit. Sucks, but I'm pretty good at writing copy for, fatigue.
Sure.
Shit like
Well,
that.
and that's it. I mean, let's face it. A lot of ad copy is, sticking in the knife and agitating pain. And when you can truly understand pain, that's got to help.
It is. And it's so much when I work with students and such is just like, I'm almost like, you're not making me feel anything.
Yeah.
And they write all this stuff. I was looking at somebody's copy recently and I was like, listen, the idea here isn't bad, but I'm not feeling a fucking thing. This guy was writing about a scene, a true story too, where a guy was like, talking about his wife almost being raped by two guys. Right.
Yeah.
And it was just, and he was like, and she destroyed the guy's kneecap. And I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, just shut the fuck up. Are you serious? Are you seriously thinking like, A, I'm not feeling a thing. B, you're using this incredibly masculine, powerful language talking about a woman in a certain situation. C, you're not understanding your target market or how they see women, right?
Yeah.
Like the target market, they want to be the one who does the rescuing. Like all of this stuff that to me has become kind of obvious about human beings, right?
Sure.
But most people haven't spent their entire lives stewing in this shit and then going through your own kind of personal, all that kind of fun stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, for all the listeners out there, I think this is really common in any internet business, people that are drawn to this, there's a high propensity for social anxiety, ADD, all of that. I mean, honestly, every time I go to an entrepreneur type conference or whatever, I'm like, oh, my people, we're all ADD. We're all, got some kind of
antisocial. We just talked. You and I were hanging out at Onyx thing, and you're like, "Want to get dinner?" I'm like, "No, I need to go back to my room and get stoned and be alone for a while."
Yeah, totally.
That's what I need to do right now. I love you. We're good friends, but I need to go do that right now.
Yeah, 110%. Yeah, 110%. So for those listeners out there that are going, "Oh my God, I'm not alone," you're definitely not alone. 100%.
You're not alone. Everything you are feeling, other people are feeling too. Every piece of like the imposter complex. I mean, so people come to me sometimes and they're like, "You have the imposter complex?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I do." Or people describe me as very confident, right? Like this is a thing that seems to be a thing these days. I don't see myself that way. I see myself still as the skinny 19-year-old with massive amounts of social anxiety who would try to go to the party, walk around outside for an hour, and then walk home without going inside.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So like even people that you think have their shit together, they don't think they do.
So true. And I mean, you know as many as I do in the guru space, right? All these guys that are leading, industry, and everybody looks up to them. And man, I'm not going to name names and stuff, but you start peeling back the layers. There's layers upon layers of insecurity and social anxiety, and so the stuff you see in those videos and stuff like that ain't necessarily the truth.
People don't show off their cars because they feel secure in themselves.
Yeah.
Like that people don't feel the need to go on there and show a bunch of pictures of themselves, being surrounded by prostitutes at events, because they actually feel good about themselves and feel secure in who they are. They 100%. Just don't do that. This is my rule in general. The more somebody fronts, the more of a coward that I figure they are, right? The more somebody's trying to show themselves as being tough, I'm just like, oh, you're a cream puff in there. Actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Just layers of insecurity that you're burring.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So here's what I want to talk about today, Chris.
Cool.
And I think we can open some eyes because I've been in the e-com space now for a decade. Some very competitive niches and it was interesting when I got into e-com. I came from info and some software, but info coaching, high ticket stuff, right?
Yep.
Since 97, and very much long copy, direct response. That was my thing.
Your bread and butter.
My bread and butter. And when I came over to the e-com side, I'm like, first of all, I wanted to do something that didn't have my face on it for, a while. And I wanted to do something
for good reasons.
Yeah. Yes. And I wanted to do something to scale and stuff like that. But I got into this e-com space and I was watching, I was looking around. I'm like, my God, like people are effectively just going out, finding products and putting it in front of people that are looking for it, and calling that a success, but they're not actually really maximizing. They're not creating real connections with people. And so that's why I was like, hey, can I come in here and take my direct response chops and take an e-com company and really grow it? And guess what? It worked.
You could.
Yeah. And it's interesting because back in the early days, we look down our nose at branding's for suckers and stuff like that. Yeah. But, one of the things that I kind of saw coming, and one of the things I looked at was, I'm like, direct response, if you do it well, creates a brand, right? Yep. And becomes a byproduct of good direct response and growing. And that's kind of how
as long as you're actually delivering on your products and things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes.
Otherwise you get the wrong kind of reputation and everybody talks.
Sure. And I've seen many of e-com business fold, right? Yep. Now, that being said, there's one specific strategy that you are the legend. When you talk about VSLs in this world, there's two names that come up: Chris Haddad and John Benson. Right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You guys are the people that are always talked about. Now, VSLs, I've used them. In fact, you and I are already talking about working on some together, right? Mm-hmm. And they're for e-com products. And so I want to dive into VSLs. I mean, I think they're probably more commonly used in information coaching, stuff like that, right? High tech.
They have been. They're big in supplements these days as well.
Yes.
Right. Like there's been a big, especially the last, I would say 5 years.
Yeah.
Supplement, Brad Howard, those guys, and a bunch of other people have done very, very well with supplement-based VSLs, people that have come from information marketing and then applied it over to the supplement side of things.
Yeah. So it's come over to the supplement side.
Yeah.
But I think it has a lot more application.
I think so too.
I think it could be used in a lot of places that people aren't using it. So let's dive into that. And one of the things that I'd like to pick your brain on is, when is a VSL appropriate? Let's start there.
Interesting. I mean, for me, so I'm known for storytelling, right? Yes. I'm known for storytelling and emotion, storytelling and emotion, storytelling and emotion. And usually when I'm using a VSL, it's on cold traffic whenever possible, right? Like I want, because what I need all of that space for, what I need that longer VSL for is to do the romancing, right? To do the connection, to get to know the other person on the other end. Because we're usually not using a brand really at that point. Michael Fiore is kind of a brand at this point or whatever. But like people are always like, oh, will anybody actually watch that long video? Will anybody actually read all that copy? And it's like, A, they will as long as it's interesting. And yes. B, you really can't skip the romance, right? Like certainly, dating is always the metaphor that's used. You walk up to a bunch of women. If you walk up to 200 women randomly on the street, maybe you might get one to sleep with you just by walking up to them and saying, hey, will you have sex with me? Maybe one will say yes. Everybody else needs you to actually take them on a date and get to know them a little bit and all the other kind of stuff that goes along with it. And so many times people think they can just kind of skip all of that and say, hey, I've got a product. But to your point before, you were talking about how early e-com was just, oh, here's a product. People are looking for that product. Let me connect them and they buy it. And that's like, they already are very aware of what they want and how to get it. The biggest thing for us is like, okay, we're not going to, what I would be doing with like longer copy direct response is not, hey, you're looking for a flashlight. Here's how you want to buy a flashlight. It would be like, hey, you're worried that your wife is going to get attacked while walking down the street at night. Here's a completely innocent looking flashlight that is actually one of the deadliest weapons ever known to man. And here's why. Right? And then you're bringing them from the desire for a particular outcome. And then you're having the product be the thing that actually delivers that outcome instead of just being like, hey, basic e-com, which is like, do you want this thing? Okay. You want this thing.
Right. So people have a problem. They're not aware there's a solution.
Yeah. Or they don't know which thing from a solution they actually want to get. If you have to do some educating, basically.
Yeah,
and you can do it like through a VSL. You can also do it through a launch process. You can do it through pre-sale pages that lead to anything. But the actual sales conversation, you always have to actually hit every single bit of it.
Okay. So, and this is an interesting question. VSL versus a long sales letter.
Yeah.
When would you use one over the other?
It really depends on generally speaking, I use VSLs because all the testing we do still shows that VSLs work better.
Yeah.
Right. And that's entirely what it is. Very often what I'll do is have both a VSL and the long form text letter. Right. And we'll usually have like the VSL be the basic landing page. And then there's a little like skip to the text version link on that page for people that just want to actually read the letter. Or when we're doing multiple emails, we'll start off with the VSL. Okay, we'll get a number of sales that way. By day 2 or 3, if we're doing a campaign, we'll say, hey, just go read this thing instead. I know you don't have time to watch the video, but here's the version you can read instead. And we would always see about 10% of our sales come from the text sales letter at that point.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So about 10% still cut over there. And
it's about what we would see. It might be a little higher now. I'd actually have to go check the stats again. It's been a little while. But, for me, it's all just being data driven. It's all about just like, hey, what's actually going to work? And to your point before, when I came into the relationship advice niche and took over 10 years ago, it was because I had taken what I knew worked from IM, from internet marketing training stuff, working with Jeff Walker, working with guys like that. And everybody else in that niche was basically doing ripoffs of Eben Pagan copy, right? It was the exact same formula that Craig Clements had come up with years and years ago and I came in with harder hitting, direct response focused stuff, and I cleaned up. I just took over the niche. Much like with you got into the e-com space and said, let's apply what we actually know works already in information marketing, direct response, and apply it. And it worked really, really well. I think it's just a matter of, I just always want to be testing things from other worlds, from other kind of niches, other things, and saying, hey, will this work for us or not?
Yeah. Okay. So for everybody listening, I just want to break this down just so you understand truly, just clarify. VSLs, if people already are looking for your product, they know that it's a solution. You just need to sell them on why your solution's the best, right? Yeah. And I don't know if you necessarily, I guess you could do a VSL for that. But a true VSL is more introduction of, here's a solution to the problem you didn't know about.
Yeah, we're just starting from the problem in the first place, right?
Starting straight from the problem.
So for Text the Romance Back, for instance, one of my older offers, right? Like that VSL, which is not done really as a story VSL, like what I would do these days, is really the first half of that VSL was explaining why texting is like a magical channel into your partner's mind where you can blah, blah, blah. And then I present the product as a solution to that. I'm not just saying, are you looking for a program that will teach you how to send romantic texts? Yes. Right? Because people aren't already looking for that. What they're looking for is, how do I get the romance back in my relationship? So then the VSL is basically like, hey, the answer to that is actually by using text messages. Here's why, and here's how I can do it for you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So for the people that I see and I've seen this all the time, people are like, I created this good product, but people don't even know it exists, right?
Yes.
It solves a problem. They don't even know this exists. Yeah, how do I get them there? And that's it. That's a VSL.
Yeah. Yeah. The point is that to tell the story, the thing is too, like, again, I'm known for storytelling copy, storytelling and emotion. And I think in ecom, people leave so much money on the table by not focusing on the storytelling and the emotion, by not focusing enough on the story of the product. Who created the product? Where did it come from? Why is it there? Add some personality to it. You see the things that really, really do well out there. There's usually some kind of, like, look at Shark Tank, the things that actually kind of take off from that. There's a story behind it. There's like, it's like, oh, I was your average mom who was sick of all of my laundry smelling like garlic all the time, but how else was I going to keep the vampires away? So I went on this whole journey and figured out a way to use holy water in my laundry that actually kept the vampires away without things having to smell like garlic. And now I'm bottling this special pure holy water that you can use to keep the blah, 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 right? Yeah. There's a story there. There's a fucking story there. And you can actually sell it based on that more than just selling, well, in this case, holy water, which is probably not the best thing, but that's where my brain went on this whole thing.
I warned everybody, like, this is going to be entertaining. This is the best part, guys. For everybody listening, you ask Chris for examples, like his brain just goes off in the most bizarre directions, which I find just absolutely amusing.
Yeah. You used to pinball a lot more when you knew me 10 years ago.
Now it's just
my energy is a little more chill,
a little more manageable.
Yeah, before I was properly medicated back.
Yeah, fair. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So look, and I think what the question, especially in the e-com space, people need to ask themselves is, okay, do people know that my product is a potential solution for them? Right. Yeah. And if the answer is no, then we need to start going, okay, is a VSL potentially the right way to go to introduce that? Also, the other side of this as well is where I see it work is with cold traffic. Yep. When and I guess this is kind of the same. You see, if you're dealing with search traffic is pretty high intent most of the time, because they may be looking specifically for what you have, and you just got to sell them.
So for instance, I have a product called Text Your Ex Back.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That's very specific. People that are looking for either getting your ex back, or even like, what text should I send to my ex? They're very aware of what they're looking for. Right?
Exactly. And you don't need to push those guys through a big old VSL sales funnel.
I still use a VSL for them, but it's starting from a different presupposition.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Fair.
Like, we already know what the problem is. I mean, I still think you can use VSLs a lot more than I think people do.
Yeah.
In order to actually kind of bring them in. And I do think in e-com, one of the biggest problems people have sometimes is not using enough copy. Right.
For sure.
Enough stuff in there, and falling for that idea that, nobody will read that stuff. People
Yeah.
don't have long enough attention spans. I swear. Okay, why does Joe Rogan have a 3-hour fucking podcast that people listen to twice a week?
So true.
Are you
Yeah.
nuts? Why are you listening to this podcast? We've been going for a while now.
Yeah.
Like, come
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
No, that's been the question since the dawn of long copy, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to read this. Nobody's going to watch this. And the answer, my favorite. Okay, so I was doing a conference in the UK. This going back probably 15 years ago, and I'm up on the stage and I'm talking about direct response and long copy. And these couple Brits come up to me after, and they're like, that may work in America, but that doesn't work on the Brits. And I'm like, oh really? I'm like, so how did you hear about this event? Well, I bought your course. Oh, you bought my course.
Yeah,
where did you see that? Oh, it was a long sales letter. Oh, and you're British, right? Like it freaking works.
It does.
100%.
No, Germans will say it doesn't work on them. Germans are very big. Germans are very big on saying that it will not work on them. I have not done a lot in Germany. I do know friends that sell into the German market and do quite well.
Yes.
And I will say one of my shticks all the time, Derek, is like, you bring me somebody that swears they can't be sold and I'm doing backflips. I'm like, that's great. Yes. I love that you think you can't be sold, because if you think you can't be sold, you can be sold so easily just by being a little artistic about it and by puffing up your ego a bit and whatever else. It's fucking easy.
Yeah,
it's like people that think they can't get taken in by cults, right? Because anybody can be taken in by a cult. I could, you could. If we're in the right situation, the right mindset, we just had somebody die, we just got divorced, we whatever. Hell yeah, it can happen.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, and this is funny because in the e-com space, it's probably there is a belief that too much copy. Oh no, I can't put more copy on my product page. And I'm like, bullshit. You absolutely.
Why the hell wouldn't you just test
it? Yes. Yeah.
This is the problem too. The problem too, though, is I'll say, well, why don't you test it? And they're like, okay, and they just do long, shitty copy. Right?
That's what I was about to say.
I'm like, you had your assistant write that. Like, no, you need to get an actual copywriter that knows what they're doing. There's a reason we get paid a lot of fucking money. Right? When you're good, you get paid a lot of money. Yeah. If you're not good, you don't get paid shit, and ChatGPT is going to take your job. But hey, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and look, on product pages where, let's say it's affiliate traffic, it's warm, like they come in, they're already partially sold on the brand, right? I still have all the elements. It's just in a shorter form, right? Like hook, agitate, problem, headlines, feature benefits, all that stuff. It's just in a shorter format. You need it.
Well, sometimes people even like they need to see that to feel comfortable, right?
Yes.
Like oftentimes, old school direct sales letters, right? Like long form Dan Kennedy style sales letters, right? Dan Kennedy talks about the dual readership path, right? Something I learned many, many years ago. And the dual readership path is you've got the actual letter, which starts at the beginning and goes into the bottom, and then you have all the subheads, right? And the subheads need to tell the story all by themselves, right? So whatever they should be, you should be able to just skim the subheads and kind of know a version of it, because we know not everyone's going to read the whole fucking letter, but they just want to know that it's all kind of covered there. They'll skim it, they'll look at it, they'll be that. You can't just not have it anyway because you think, hey, everyone's kind of seen this before.
So, okay, and then that's interesting. So that's the one thing with VSLs that people can't do is skim.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So
and in that case, the cool thing about VSLs is that you have that control over people, right? And you have to, and again, it's a split testing thing that you kind of see whether it works better or not, but it does seem like if you actually the control to force somebody to go through the entire sales process and actually read it or listen to it, then that works great. On a long form kind of thing, you don't have that control. So if you're just going to like a sales page or just a page that actually is the page if you just need to put out information that's relatively quick to absorb, you just put it on a text page. The video thing, there's a cost and a benefit. The cost being some people just aren't going to watch the fucking video, but the numbers that we always run still show that we make more sales overall.
Yeah, and exactly. And one of the tests I did run as well, because I had to prove it to my team because they didn't believe me. We had a VSL, and I was not revealing the buy now link until the offer was revealed, right?
Oh, and they were against that.
They were like, no, we can't do that. People need to see the offer. We're going to lose people. And I was like, no, we're not. So, I was like, fine, let's test it. Yep. Wasn't even close.
No, not even close. I had a friend, this guy Richard I know years ago. He was running a launch in the women's, the men's niche, men's like pickup niche, right? Yeah. And he was like, "Man, this offer's fucking kicking ass, man. We're getting the highest conversion rates we ever have." But I look at the ad, I'm like, "Well, they're sucking for me, so that's interesting. Let's take a look at the ad here." And we go there and I'm like, oh dude, have you tried, your buy button is there right from the beginning.
Yeah.
You should delay it. Cause every test I've ever done, right, you delay it and you often get 50% higher conversion rates by actually getting people to watch the video. And he said, yeah, I did. I tested that. Yeah, I did. But for my offers, it works better having the buy button right there. And I'm like, yes. Do you want to know why? He's like, why? Because your copy fucking sucks. That's why.
Yeah.
Because people don't want to watch your copy. Because why? Because when you force somebody to watch your video, they're like, I don't want to be here. This isn't really worth watching. That's the only reason that having the buy link up there right from the beginning would work better, unless they're coming from a really intense pre-sale page where your page is basically just a cart page anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because, and this is something I think, people need to think harder about. Is it the strategy that didn't work, or was the strategies poorly executed?
Absolutely. Because it's so easy for people to do. Like, people are like, well, I tried long copy. I'm like, let me take a look at it. I'm like, yeah, this is awful.
Like, 100%.
What do you want? There's a reason it's not working. You can't just be like, oh, it's long and therefore it's like somebody being like, they wrote a 1,000-page book. It's like, yeah, well, you're still not fucking George R.R. Martin, man.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you got words on the page. Yeah. So let's, can you walk us through just the structure of a VSL?
Ooh, yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. So let's take my Make 'em Worship You VSL, for instance, right? So Make 'em Worship You is an offer Michael Fiore did. It's a very generically named product on purpose because we were doing it on cold traffic. And it's a storytelling based VSL, right? Which is something I'm really known for. It works extraordinarily well in the relationship niche. And by that, I just mean that I start that particular letter with a story as opposed to with a standard kind of open. So a standard would be like, hi, my name is Michael Fiore. In the next 3 minutes, I'm going to teach you about blah, 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 all that kind of crap. In this case, we just start with the story. It's a woman's voice, this woman, Kate, who is a customer of ours. And she goes, he kissed me like his sister and I knew I was alone again. I never stopped being alone in the first place. For weeks now, we'd been dating, blah, blah, blah. And she tells the story of him. She met this guy, she had her heart broken before, but, she met this guy and he kind of convinced her to go out with him and she felt her heart opening and she was really reluctant, but then they had sex and it was wonderful and she felt alive again, but then he stopped texting as much and he pulled away and it was horrible. And the reason that I'm telling that story is because that's a story that every single woman who I am trying to sell to has felt before, right? So then I have the woman go off and she has to figure out the solution to that problem. So the beginning of that letter is basically we're showing the problem and agitating the problem, but in my particular case, I'm doing it from a first person perspective. So I'm not saying, hey, have you ever had a guy pull away when all you wanted was for him to pull you closer and want to know why? That'd be something I would put in like an email, basically. But I like to do it as a first person story thing because it's less aggressive. I'm not telling you things that you're actually feeling. I'm telling you what I'm feeling instead. There's my dog back there being, what is he getting up to? I don't know. He wants some attention right now. That's okay. So anyway, we tell that story that shows that I understand the problem, agitates the problem to some degree. Then from there, I have the woman go on and she actually discovers this Michael Fiore guy. She tries figuring out the reason that men pull away. She can't figure it out. She buys products even that don't work for her. She discovers Michael Fiore. So she discovers the guru for that particular product. They have an interaction. The short version is basically that the information that Michael Fiore has that's so special gets stolen from him by her. She uses it. She gets amazing results. She gives it to friends of hers. They get amazing results. And that's what I call the product creation story, right? Because then the idea is that she goes and forces Michael Fiore to release it to the world. And then we go into the actual pitch. But that first chunk, all that story stuff, that's the first 12 minutes of the letter.
And I don't think you'll ever beat that with a traditional, hi, my name's Michael Fiore. And in the next 3 minutes, because immediately when you start telling that story, that's how humans like to communicate. We read stories. We're entertained by stories.
How many hours of like TV or YouTube or books or whatever do you spend the news every single day? Humans are story we're so steeped in story, we don't even know it. Like stories are like, we're like fish and stories are water. We don't even notice anymore that it's how we interpret the world. And that's where conspiracy theories come from, right? Because we tend to feel like our brains are really good at telling us stories. And they're also really good at wanting simple answers to things. Right. So between those two, that's why so many people are so susceptible to conspiracy theories like QAnon and shit like that.
Well, I mean, even look at, here's the opposite of the conspiracy market. Let's look at the charity market, right? Yeah. Like charities, when they're like, we're going to raise money for, AIDS awareness or for cancer or for hunger in Africa, that's like meh. But when they show the picture and tell the story of the starving child, and
this is Mary. Her parents were killed. Her parents were killed in a bomb in Ukraine. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, you're just powerful. Like, as a parent, you're just like, oh my god, because when we read stories, I assume we put ourselves in that story. It connects to us at such an emotional level.
If it's done well,
it's done well, and that's the kick. And I mean, that's where obviously you're a magician with that. Yeah, so you've got to tell that story well, and I think that's an important thing that a lot of people need to remember. And guys, this applies to so many products. We're talking about Chris's products, but let's say you've come up with some new golf device that helps you improve your golf swing. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I was invited to a golf tournament. And I stepped up to the first tee, and there's literally 100 people around, business people, other guys, and I step up to the tee and I'm like, I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. And I shit you not, I missed the ball like four times in a row. And you could hear the entire crowd just get quieter and quieter and quieter. And I knew my head was throbbing, it just like glowing red. Like if you sold a golf product, like any dude that has stepped up in front of their buddies and missed the ball 4 times in a row, if you told me that story, you would hit me emotionally. You'd bring back all those emotions and I'd buy your freaking product.
Absolutely, because then the story you tell from there was like you got so embarrassed. Maybe it was like your father-in-law saw you as a shitty golfer, and that's it caused problems in your family, and then you had to go solve that problem. So you discovered you were like, hey man, I want to golf, but I'm not able to spend 8 hours every weekend golfing. Exactly. I don't have time to do that. But how can I get to the point that I can play business golf without embarrassing myself really quickly? Here's how. Right? Yep. It's easy at that point, 100%.
Right? And so that's why I'm trying to tie us back, guys, to this applies to anything that if your product solves a problem that affects people emotionally, ego-driven, loved, you can use a VSL for this.
It's also a story adds value to something, right? Like I was watching something, what was it? Somebody was just selling some crap. It was like crystals, right? Like blah, 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 crystals, whatever, right? They cost 5 cents, right?
Yeah.
They're selling them for $50. Why? Because they have a story about how these were, found in the blah, 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 and they've been blessed by the Swami of Enlightenment and blah, 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 blah. If I just went up to you and said, hey, you want these crystals? Well, I don't know. If you go to the right kind of person who believes in that kind of thing, say all this kind of stuff, and hey, make it true. Have the Swami bless it. I think it's all bullshit. But the Swami blessed it, so you're not lying. That's great. Right. But then there's value there and people will pay a lot more for it. If you add a story to even look at the collectibles market, man. Like that's a baseball. Okay. It's a baseball that was Hank Aaron's 500th home run or whatever. Well, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
The story behind it.
Did you ever watch The Office?
Yes, I've seen all The Office. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge fan of The Office. Do you remember that episode where Jim sells Dwight magic beans?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Perfect. He's like, those aren't worth anything. And then Jim tells him this elaborate story. And next thing you know, all Dwight wants is the beans.
All he wants is the beans because that's human nature. We always want things, scarcity 101. You always want to find a way to have scarcity. I have a whole concept called fuzzy scarcity that I use for information products. And the fuzzy scarcity idea is basically you never say it's not going to be there. You just say it might not be. Right. Yeah. And you're like, hey man, I don't know if I'm keeping this letter up or not. I have people that are telling me not to. There's reasons I might not to. So whatever, man, like don't come back to me 3 days from now. You see the pages down. Don't email me begging me to open it up for you because it's your own damn fault. And by the way, I love making things people's own damn fault because they don't want to do that. They don't want to feel that. So they'll give you money.
You know what? Yeah. God, where was that answer? There's been so many times when I'm like, I need to come up with a reason why we're shutting it down, or I need to come up with a believable scarcity.
Yeah. It can be tough. The funny thing is, people don't. I closed down my Pig Method program last month or 2 months and a half ago. Yeah. And since then, I've had people being like, "Hey, man, you're going to open it up again?" I'm like, "No, I told you I wasn't. I told you I was closing it, and I don't know, probably forever. I mean, I'm not going to say. I mean, who knows? Forever's a long time, but I do it, and they just don't believe me. And I'm like, no, seriously, man.
But I get it. We live in a world where, I mean, how many times was that, the Rolling Stones has done a retirement tour, right? I mean, people are just conditioned to not
Absolutely.
not believe it.
But I think it's important for for my marketing stuff is under my own name, which I don't really even do anymore. But I always tell my people, I'm like, listen, you can believe me when I say something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to, I'll hype the fuck out of you and I'll do whatever else. But if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to, and it's important to me that you know that.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got to train your audience, right?
Absolutely. You got to train your audience. Yeah.
Otherwise.
And they will learn. They will learn.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. 110%. All right. So we've talked about this, and I think, I love that. And I think people really need to embrace that, because I honestly think that's the most effective.
You can sell anything with a story, man.
With a good
whatever
story.
Whatever you have, you add a story to it and it's going to sell better, whatever it is. There's always ways to find it. And again, it's not even a matter of like making shit up. It's often just a matter of telling the story that most people aren't telling. Like, I think there's some beer company where they were like, we use hand polished casks of, well, everybody else does too, but you're the first one.
They just never did put it in their marketing.
You were the first one to say it.
Yeah.
Right. So you own that now. You were the
first.
Everybody else that says that is like, yeah, we know they did already.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. All right. So as we walk through this, any tips on closing out a VSL, your call to action? That's where I see so much fall apart. Even if they get some of it right, you get to the end and you're just like, huh.
So a version that I always use, I almost always use the crossroads close, which I don't know if you're probably aware of this, but I got it from Clayton Makepeace. I don't know where Clayton got it from, but it's a classic kind of structure. And the version of it I generally use is like, say for Make 'Em Worship You or something like that, it would be me basically being like, listen, okay, it's decision time. It's that maybe one of the most important decisions of your life. And when you really think about it, you really just have three options right now. Option one is that you leave this page right now. You forget that you ever watched this video. You go back to the way the problems you've had with men are right now. You meet another man. You open your heart to him. You have your heart broken again. You end up right back where you are right now. I know we both don't want that, so I don't think that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Option two is you go off and you learn all this stuff for yourself, like I had to. You go through all the travails of the story that I already told you about, and blah, blah, blah. But we all know you're not going to do that because you don't have time. And then option three is just buy the goddamn product, and I paint the picture of the benefit from there. I've used that close over and over and over again many times, because you can plug pretty much whatever you want in it. But I'm always just like, dude, I close hard. Like, my copy, if you read my copy, the first 10, 12 minutes, it's all story stuff and it's all empathetic and whatever. Mm-hmm. And it still stays that way empathetic wise, but I sell hard. Like, once you get to the point that here's a product, you sell hard all the way through. You use scarcity, you use all the psychology that goes along with it, loss reversal, risk reversal, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 110%. I think a lot of people, if you survey an audience, and I've done this many times, I'm like, who here likes to sell? Right. Yeah. And nobody likes being a salesperson. Right. Yeah. But in a VSL, the beauty of it is you're not sitting across the table from somebody. Absolutely. You do it once and you do it right. And you need to be aggressive. You've brought them that far. And here's the reality. If they make it to the close, they want to take action.
Dude, I say that in the copy all the time. That's one of my little tricks, right? I say, listen, why are you still watching this video?
Yeah.
Right? Like this video is 45 minutes long and you're still here. The only reason you would still be here is because you want to buy this, but something is holding you back.
Sure.
Right?
So, and then when you call them action, and you take them to the sales page, how much copy do you have on there? Or do you, I'm always torn. I'm like, well, I don't want to get them reading stuff and getting distracted. And I just want to keep it as super simple. And
you mean on the cart page?
Yeah, cart page. Like if you take the cart.
We've tested a bunch of different stuff over the years. I think one version of our cart page right now has like testimonials and stuff on it, and that really helps. Other times we've tested things that work differently. It seems to change over time. Like every few years, a different one is kind of working, probably because the market gets used to seeing one thing a certain way. Like I was shocked that VSLs still do as well as they do. You would think it would have been saturated by now, but I think people just keep evolving it and kind of finding new ways to do things.
Well, they do. And I mean, something that you just asked me about, if I'd ever tried before, is these interactive VSLs.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, have you used one yet, or you're just exploring?
We have one we produced that it's been, for some reason, it's taken way too long to get this kind of handled. I had one of my key employees decided to exit the company. So that slowed everything down for a while. And we're starting to test it now. I think it's pretty good, but we don't really have any data back yet. But hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have some decent data on that. I'm excited to try it out, though, with some people I'm working with. I think there's some potential. The key with an interactive, I think, is you need to have a really good piece of talent on camera, right? Ideally.
Sure.
Somebody who's got some rapport with the audience and can really connect with them. Yeah.
Now, I guess from my perspective, the biggest benefit I see to an interactive VSL right out of the gate is allowing them to self-select into specific categories that you can then tailor the message to.
To a degree, but I actually think it's more powerful. That's a way to do it, and that's useful.
Yeah.
But to me, I think it's more powerful to get engagement with them. So for the one that we did, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So the topic of that one is the number one sex mistake women make that drives men away, right? So we have a YouTube ad that we ran for years. Under that topic, it does super well. And we're like, well, let's make a VSL that really fulfills on it, right? Excuse me. Anyway, you go there and it says, hi, I'm Michael Fiore, and I have a quick question for you. If you were trapped on a desert island, would you rather it be with Denzel Washington, Paul Rudd, or George Clooney? Right? What does that have to do with anything? Nothing, but we just want to get that interaction going right away.
Right. A little micro commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it says, and your answer says a lot about you. I'll tell you what it means in a second. Right. Ooh. So then they do that. And then it says, oh, you chose George Clooney. That means blah, blah, blah about you. Cool. Or you chose Denzel Washington, or you chose Paul Rudd, which means, you only want to date 50-year-old men who look like they're 12 forever, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. And then from there we go into it and it says, okay, that's what it says about you. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, there's as you saw up above in the headline, there's a simple sex mistake women make that causes blah, blah, blah. I'm going to ask you, which one of these 5 things do you think it is? Right. And it says, and I think there's like sleeping with a guy too soon, sleeping with him too late, faking your orgasm, not letting him watch porn, whatever it is. Right. There's like 5 of them. Right. And for each of those, it says, okay, well, you chose sleeping with him too soon. Well, the weird thing is actually it doesn't matter when you sleep with a guy as far as whether he's going to give you a good relationship or not, blah, blah, blah. Keep going. I'll show you the real answer. And the real answer in this case is faking your orgasm. Right. So then we funnel all that stuff back where they're getting that interaction where they get to guess and find out if they're right or not, which everyone wants to be right. That's the thing. We all want to be right more than we want to know the answer. More than anyone ever wants to know the answer to anything, we want to be right. Right? Like that's the number one piece of psychology behind all of this curiosity stuff that I do in these things, right?
Sure.
So anyway, and then I say, it's actually because faking your orgasm. Here's what faking your orgasm does to a man when you do it. You may think he doesn't notice, but I guarantee you as a guy, we always notice, and that's why we pull away and blah, blah, blah. Do you want to know how to make sure that never happens again? And then we kind of go into the product pitch from there. So it's not about segmenting them out. It's actually, it's actually more like we go out and then we go back in and then we go
right.
Go out and we go back in because I'm still trying to get them to the same place. You could do it where you split them off into different products too. That's totally doable. Right?
Well, I'm not going to say different products. I think, we I'm not going to mention the product, but we were talking about one earlier where there's 2 very different demographics that are buying it for different reasons, but it's the same product. That would work there. But what you're talking about, you just kind of opened my eyes to, wow, okay, yeah, I get it. You're people love to, am I right? Am I wrong? What does this say about me? Oh my God, my wife, anytime she sees one of those,
George Clooney, what does that mean about you?
Oh God. Well, anytime my wife sees one of those, take this survey to see if your marriage is blah or whatever. She's like, ooh, let's do it. Right. Like I just love that stuff. So
but the key about it is like, surveys, it's often like, okay, take these 5 questions. At the end of those 5 questions, I'll tell you something. And that's great. And you can do that with this as well. But what's interesting to me is not so much take these 5 questions, here's the answer. It's every single thing you do. You have a piece of interaction and a piece of emotional connection with the person where you get to learn, they get to feel, you're basically doing cold reading, honestly, but hey, whatever. People believe in that shit for some reason. Anyway, it's fun stuff. I'm excited to do more with it. We're testing this one right now. I want to do more of them because they're fun. And it's a different thing though. But again, it's a different thing because I don't do those the same way I would do my standard VSLs. My standard VSLs are story-based, where it opens up with, Cassidy, look what you did to my dick, which is one of my favorites of all time that I ever did about it. It's a hand job product. Tangentially, here's the thing, guys and women who are listening, because you're all going to nod when I do this, right? So like, that product it's called Stroke of Genius. It's a hand job product.
Oh God.
I wrote the product despite having never given a hand job to anybody but myself, but that's okay. PG-13 people, PG-13.
Maybe
and
are.
and that letter is about a truth that nobody talks about. And the truth is this. And the truth is that when a man is getting a hand job from a woman, it could be the worst hand job known to man. You could be mangling his penis, choking it, rubbing it with sandpaper, and he will not complain because he knows that if he does, you will never touch his penis again. You're laughing because it's true.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
You're
Yeah,
laughing
everybody's like, "Yep."
It's all completely true. And so I use that truth in that story, and I tell women that absolute truth in that story, which is that, listen, man, if you're awful, he's never going to tell you. So you better buy the book and go learn how to be good at it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it works great.
That's amazing.
That thing converts like a motherfucker. It's great.
Brilliant. All right, dude. We're I keep,
On
I,
that.
yeah, on that. I mean, I don't even know where to go from here. So, no. Again, I always enjoy our conversations.
Absolutely.
They're amazing. Your knowledge of the human psyche is amazing. But guys,
little
everything that we were
scary,
talking
yeah.
about here, I know we were using info as examples, but this applies to
It could be,
so many products.
I could tell you a story about one of those little cigar cutters. You know,
Yeah.
there's ways you can sell that's emotional, about how it was designed, how it was like, you know, your dad's design, blah, blah, blah. He died from a heart attack 6 years ago, and you felt motivated to get this cigar design out there. And you also, you know, dedicate to heart disease for every sale that's done. That'll sell a lot better than like, here's a little cigar cutter.
Yeah.
I promise you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you're selling the story. You're not selling any of it.
Nothing
about the actual cigar cutter.
No, I mean, you go to the benefits of it. You say it's like stainless steel, carved by whatever. You do that stuff, but that's not the point. That's justification. You're really selling the emotion. You're selling the emotion. Like, look at that fucking the Squatty Potty. Right? Fucking Squatty Potty. How many of those did they sell? Does anyone use it? I don't think so. We have 2 of them. I don't even know where they came from. I didn't buy them. I did not buy them. They're just in my house. Like, I think somebody must have given them to us as a gift or something.
Dude, my wife bought them. Okay, I'm totally outing her.
Nobody uses
them. She does, and she claims it's but I'm just like, it does nothing other than trip me in the middle of the night when I go to take a whiz. It's stupid. But you're right. I mean, a great story.
Yeah, it's 100%. A little stool. It's a little stool with a carve out of it. That's all it is. It's like you can get a footstool. It does it just as well.
Exactly.
Put it down there. It's fine.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. Well, Chris, as we wrap up, if people want to connect with you, learn more about you, what you're doing, where do they go?
Go check out my podcast, thechrishaddad.show.com. If you go there, Derek is in one of my episodes. It's a show. We usually go like an hour and a half or so, and we just kind of see where things go. And oftentimes it ends up, it's not a show that's like, here's how to write 5 headlines. We don't do that. It's more like, I forget what you and I talked about, but it was a nice deep conversation.
We talked about everything.
Everything. Yeah. So, you know, one of my favorite episodes, my buddy Scott Ruick, who I think you probably know, I'd assume. Scott and I had an episode called "What to Do When You're," how to get rich when your wife hates you, I think is what it would called or something. And that episode was about the experience we both had of being very successful at what we do and making good money and being tremendously respected by our peers. And then you go home and your wife treats you like a piece of shit. Right.
Yeah.
And so like nobody else talks about that shit, but I think it's valuable to talk about. I think it's good for like a lot of people that are listening are like, oh yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking, and to that point, you talk about stuff that most people don't want to talk about.
Yeah, we do. We get into it. I'm good at getting people to open up, except for my brother, who is a stone wall.
Yeah.
That's okay.
One day.
It's an ongoing thing my mom and I talk about, where it's like, how?
Really?
That's weird. Yeah.
Huh. Bizarre. All right. Well, dude, thank you so much for being here, and hope we get to do this again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I opened your mind, all you e-com people, on how to freaking use ad copy and VSLs. There's all this opportunity out there for you to go out there and honestly to tap into larger traffic sources and convert colder traffic. And
if you want to do a thing at one point where we take like some e-com people and we get them on and I like critique and help them rewrite their copy live, I'm happy to do that, because I can show them, I can show you how this actually works. And
I think maybe you might need to come to Maryland with me, and
absolutely,
and we'll do it there.
Yeah, when
live.
Are you doing? Yeah, I'm there. I'm there.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, guys, there's a huge opportunity here. it's massively overlooked. And here's the thing: go to native, go to CNN, go to any of those sites that are running native ads. A large majority of those, if they're running an e-com product, are leading you through VSLs. Why? Because that's cold traffic, and it allows you to tap into that massive source of traffic. I've got one running right now for incontinence. Yep. And we can convert cold traffic with that. So
running incontinence, huh?
Yeah, an incontinence offer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, if you like what you heard, please leave a rating review on your favorite podcast platform. That's a fuel that keeps us going. And that's a wrap for this episode. We'll see you guys again real soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the E-commerce Expert Podcast. If you liked what you heard, make sure to give us a virtual high five by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to check out our website at ecommerceexpert.com for show notes and bonus materials. See you in the next episode.